Hey everyone, now on to how to make an object follow a path. To do this, once again, I'd like you to try making a new file so you don't make any errors in your main file. So play around and practice in your own file that you can just toss out later. Okay, so what we're going to do again, let's just take a circle, pick some pretty colors. You can have an outline color so you can practice with the problem with the strokes. And we're going to just draw a circle. Let's let it hang out over here for now. Remember that this area here is where your animation takes place. So if I was to export right now, Command return, there's nothing in my animation. Anything that you want to have hanging out the sides or flying out the sides can live in this gray area and it won't show up. In order to make this circle follow a path that we draw, we're going to add something called a classic guide layer. You right click on layer 1 and you add classic motion guide. Okay, and you'll see that this layer becomes almost a sub-layer to the guided layer. What we want to do for the guide layer is click in frame 1 of the guide layer, grab the pen tool, and draw yourself the path for which you'd like this object to follow. So in this case, we will do something like it's going to go flying out the side. Great. Then we're going to say how long do we want this to happen over, okay? And also make note, this does not matter. You're not going to see this later. It doesn't need to be a certain color or no fill. So let's say it's going to take 50 frames for this object to fly across the screen. We're going to insert keyframes at the end here. We're going to apply a motion guide to layer 1, control click, classic tween here, and notice that it actually automatically hopped onto the top of the path that you drew. It's because it basically knows what you're trying to do. And notice a couple of things. When this thing is not on the path, it doesn't even want to let me do it because it's being controlled by this guide layer. Notice that you have this little crosshair in the middle of the white circle. That's going to show up in every single one of the items that you've brought in from Illustrator. It's your rotation point. You can move this if you want to, but it's basically also the snapping point for how this object is going to follow along this path. So right now it's snapped. You'll see how it snaps on, see how it's leaping onto the path, and it's starting there. That's great. So what we want to tell Flash is that by the time 50 frames goes by, I want this pink circle to be at the end of this path. Okay? So see how it follows along. If we export our movie, Command return, whee! There goes your little pink ball, and there's no visual evidence of the path that you drew. Consider time in this as well. I'm going to extend the amount of time. I've just held Shift, and I'm still holding Shift while I move the keyframes across. So I've now changed it from 50 frames to 95 frames. So let's watch what happens. Way slower. Okay, that's important. One of the things I talked about when you were first starting the assignment was not to have your work be really chaotic. If you have only 20 seconds for this to happen, it's just going to go so fast and it's crazy. It's not going to look that interesting. You don't even know that it's happened practically, right? So think about how long you want things to happen over the course of time. And practice around with using a guide layer, and then consider how using a guide layer might apply to something in here. Let's do that quickly. Let's figure out where's the red planet. There's a red planet up in the top. Going to control click, so you can see this one more time, add a classic motion guide. It's cooperating with this layer here. Let's go into the guided layer to draw the path that this guy's going to follow. Let's make him follow, oops, started it in the wrong spot here. Guide layer, start here. Oh, of course there's a bell ringing. For some reason we can't see my, let's lock a few other things behind here. Can't see what I'm drawing. There we go. Not sure why that happened, but we can adjust it in a sec. So let's see if we want this guy to fly in and out and around like this. And just like in Illustrator, you can go in and move these around. You could bring this guy back up in here. You want to be careful of looping paths back on themselves. They can get confused. So try to keep the path relatively simple. Okay, that's on here. Now let's have our little red planet attach itself to our path. See how it hopped on there? Let's add a classic tween. And let's say that by this point in the animation, we want this guy to be, oop, that's the end of the thing. Just being very uncooperative right now. Don't want to select the path. There we go. Ugh. Just this. Lock the guide for a second. There we go. So let's say by halfway we want him here. That might be helpful to you when you're trying to move everything across. And by the end, we want him right out over there. So let's see if it follows along. You can test it. There he goes. Whee! So let's look. There he goes. Awesome. Okay, so a couple of things I had to do there to make sure that worked. I locked the guide layer so that because that planet is so small, my mouse is getting confused as to where I'm trying to click. Again, you could zoom in, but very easily just lock the guide layer. And it also happened to have a keyframe halfway through this whole thing from something we'd done earlier. Why not use it? Why not tell Flash that by this point you want it to be here, and by this point you want it to be there? Okay, and then it'll follow along. Okay, good luck.